If you couldn't tell by my last name, Marchione, I am very Italian. Because I am very Italian, I have a soft spot in my heart for movies about the mob. And yes, this is going to be a video breaking down the best mob movies of all time, aka my favorite mob movies of all time, because it's all subjective. We all have our own opinions on this stuff, and I have not seen every mob movie ever, but these are going to be my favorite movies. I love mob movies. As an Italian who has a very, very Italian family, not hinting towards anything, FBI, don't look into it, please. But of course, as an Italian with a very Italian family, we just kind of really love these movies. There's a lot of things in these movies outside of just the killing that really kind of aligns culturally with things that we have experienced in our lives. Yet again, not the crime stuff. So I have 9 movies here I want to go through. I am ranking them from worst to best, but it's not, don't think too hard about it. These are just the best and my recommendations if you want to get into mob stuff. Yet again, not every movie ever. I haven't seen every movie ever, so if there's an amazing mob movie out there and it's not on this list, it's probably because I haven't seen it. And yes, most of this list consists of 2 filmmakers. You already know who they are, so yeah, just be ready. You're gonna see a lot of Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola on here. Just be ready for that. I also want to say this is really gangster movies. There's a couple movies on here that might not be characterized as Italian mob. So yeah, when you see those movies come up, don't leave a comment like, no, those aren't really mob movies. I'm saying they're mob movies for this video. Let's get into it. I can hear you. Heat's not a mob movie, it's a crime movie. It's a crime thriller. Well, I'm considering it a mob movie because I think Robert De Niro in this film and his crew, these gangsters, they are gangsters. They're not just bank robbers, they are absolute organized criminals. And this is, in my opinion, Michael Mann's best movie. Heat follows this kind of rivalry that is going on between Robert De Niro, who is running this bank robbing gang, and Al Pacino, who plays this cop who is essentially tracking them down. It is a long, epic action thriller about these two going head to head, and it is one of the best movies ever made. It is absolutely incredible. One of the most suspenseful bank robbing movies you'll ever watch. It has some of the best performances out there. I mean, the character dynamics between De Niro and Al Pacino are incredible. Of course, everybody talks about that one scene where they're sitting together and Al Pacino says the amazing line, "If it's between you and some poor bastard's wife you're gonna make a widow, brother, you're going down." Dunkachino? My Al Pacino impression, not very good, but I love the movie. This film has one of the best third acts in film. There's a shootout and a heist scene that is just so thrilling. And although this one doesn't have all of the amazing things that I love about mob movies you'll see me talk about in some of these other films, it is just one of the best movies about organized crime. Go watch it, it's epic, it's thrilling. And I'm actually kind of excited for Heat 2, even though Michael Mann is kind of at a weird point in his career where he's not making great movies anymore. The first time you're going to see Martin Scorsese on this list, not the last. The Departed is Martin Scorsese's weirdest mob movie, because it's not really a love letter to Italians. It's not really about the Italian mob. There's a lot of Irish influences in this movie. This is a film about 2 characters who are both undercover. Matt Damon, who plays a mobster who is undercover in the police force in Boston, and of course Leonardo DiCaprio, who is a police officer who's undercover in the mob. You get a brilliant performance by Jack Nicholson, who plays this mob boss, and this whole film is more so about kind of being undercover and pretending to be something you're not and trying to take down the other side. It's a brutal epic that has some really dark stuff in it, but also just some really good character things. This is probably the deepest character, Leonardo DiCaprio's character in this film. It's probably the deepest and most well-written character in any of these Scorsese films. There's a lot of depth to him, and I really like where they go with the character. The third act in this movie is incredibly, incredibly tense and just surprising. I think Mark Wahlberg, Marky Mark, gives one of his best performances in this movie. I think he's hilarious in it. And overall, this is a film that is just absolutely remarkable. I believe it won Best Picture at the Oscars. I think it's Scorsese's only win, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is a terrific film, although I don't consider it to be a part of the Scorsese trilogy of mob films, because it's very different than those other 3 that we may or may not be talking about very soon. I still think that Departed is one of his best films, and one that more people should talk about. It's not really talked about that much in his filmography. I love A Bronx Tale. I have such a soft spot in my heart for this movie. It is a wonderful, wonderful picture. Directed by Robert De Niro. Written by Chaz Palminteri, who also stars in the movie. A Bronx Tale is about this boy. This boy named C, who's growing up on the streets as a teenager, and we watch him go from a kid to a adult teen, and kind of experience the life growing up on the streets that may not be so safe. And he kind of has this divide between fathers. You have Sonny, who is this mob boss, who comes off as a very nice guy. He's a very good dude visually. But he does things that, of course, are not very good. He is, of course, a mobster. He is not a good dude. And he's got a father, played by Robert De Niro, who also directed the movie, who is kind of the working man. He's kept his hands clean. He is a good man who works his ass off. But there's a weird respect factor there between these two characters. This movie has a lot more going for it than just that, but it is truly a very beautiful story, a different kind of mob movie. This is not about kind of the dark Italian vibes, the wax, the craziness. This is a straight-up family tale in a weird way. That's both a love letter to the streets, people who have grown up in this area, but also just kind of a weird family movie. I guess that's the best way to describe it. This is one of my personal favorite films of all time, but I don't think it's one of the best straight-up mob movies, which is why it ranks a little bit lower, but I love A Bronx Tale. Martin Scorsese's second film on this list, yet again, won't be his last. Casino, the first film in the mob trilogy that we will be talking about. I do think it is probably my least favorite. But catch me on any other day, my opinion will probably change. My opinion on the Scorsese mob trilogy, there's days I'll say Casino's the best, and there's days like today I'll say it's the worst. Casino is a freaking masterpiece of a film. This is one of those films that I legitimately think about every single day. There are lines in this movie, moments in this movie that I can't stop quoting and thinking about. It is a brilliant film about Robert De Niro, who plays this mobster who goes and has to run a casino in Las Vegas, where he encounters a lot of problems, mainly Joe Pesci's Nicky Santoro, who is kind of the mob boss of the area, and he is just a wild prick. He is incredible in this film. This is my favorite Joe Pesci performance of all time. He is so crazy here, so incredible, so unhinged, even more so than in Goodfellas, which we'll talk about in a little bit, obviously. This is one of my favorite Robert De Niro performances. Sam, aka Ace, he's very different than a lot of the other characters he's played in mob movies. He's not kind of this unhinged, crazy murderer. He's not this misunderstood crazy murderer. Instead, he's a dude that just loves making money. He loves business, and he kind of wants to keep his hands clean of all the other bullshit, and watching him juggle everything going on in this movie is wonderful to see. The only reason this film ranks lower than the other ones, I do think the fact that this movie kind of relatively follows this love story between Ace and, of course, his wife, played by Sharon Stone. It does water down the movie sometimes. It's like it's the part of the movie I'm always least interested in revisiting. I don't really care that much about it, and it overstays its welcome, the storyline. But it does work well enough, and I love Sharon Stone's performance here. This film is also visually probably Scorsese's best of the mob trilogy. This is a beautiful movie. Vegas looks bright and eccentric. It looks like a kind of fairyland, fantasy land. The deserts are wide and huge and open. There's shots in here that make some of the desert shots in Breaking Bad go to shit. This is just a beautiful movie. I love Casino. The music, everything about this is perfect, and the fact that it ranks this low on this list just shows how good we have it in the mob movie community, if that's a thing. Is there a mob movie community? Let's start one. I can already see a bunch of you getting upset that I'm ranking The Godfather Part 2 this low, because there are people out there that believe The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2 are the greatest movies of all time. You're either somebody that believes that, or you're somebody that believes that the movies are a little bit overrated. I'm somewhere in the middle on that, believe it or not, which is kind of a rare thing. I like the Godfather films. I don't love them more than a couple of the other films we're going to have on this list. But I do respect them. I respect what Francis Ford Coppola did with these films, and I understand why they are so amazing and beloved. The Godfather Part 2 is a sequel to The Godfather Part 1, also kind of a prequel, where we follow both Al Pacino's Michael Corleone, as he is now the godfather of the family and has to deal with all the problems that come with that, and we also get the contrast of following Vito Corleone, played by Robert De Niro, and watching his kind of origin story of becoming the Godfather. And we get to see both the rise of the Corleone family and sort of the downward spiral of the Corleone family. This is an epic masterpiece of proportions that we don't really get to see anymore. It's a beautifully shot movie. Visually, it is absolutely stunning. It has some of the best performances you're going to get, but still, to me, this is not my type of film in a weird way. In the sense that I love the mob movies like the Scorsese ones. I love the ones that kind of poke a little bit of fun at the Italian culture and don't over-glorify it. I'm not saying that The Godfather over-glorifies it, but The Godfather's about suits and being badasses and talking very quiet. Versus, Goodfellas and all these other films are about, the gabagool. Tommy two times. He likes to say everything twice. I'm gonna go get the papers, We're making fun of Italians while loving Italians. That's the type of shit I like. But yes, The Godfather Part 2 is a masterpiece, blah, blah, blah. You know it. I put it on the list, and I put the other one higher, too, so let's move on. Reservoir Dogs, yes, it is a mob movie. It's about organized crime. It's not a mob movie in the vein of the other films we've talked about, but it is still fantastic, a masterpiece, and arguably Quentin Tarantino's best film. He hit it out of the ballpark on his first try. This is a film that is essentially about a failed robbery. You have this crew that came together to rob a jewel store, and it went wrong, and people died, and now they have to figure out what to do in the aftermath, and you have all these criminals trying to figure out who the rat is, and we get flashbacks, and it's just a perfectly written movie that feels almost more like a stage play than anything else. This is a wonderful, wonderful film with incredible performances from Harvey Keitel, Steve Buscemi, and everybody else involved. It is a mob film because it's about a bunch of pricks that are just not good human beings, turning on each other, arguing with each other, cursing at each other. It is a brilliant film. It's got violence. It's got brutality. It is just amazing. I don't know why this film is not talked about enough. More people talk about Pulp Fiction, which I did think about putting on this list, but we're not going to talk about Pulp Fiction just because I only wanted to put one Tarantino film, and I think Reservoir Dogs is probably the better one. In my opinion, I might get a lot of shit for that. I just saw 2 people unsubscribe as I said that. But I just think Reservoir Dogs is one of the best scripts ever written, and Quentin Tarantino has floated around the idea of trying to do, like, a remake of this, remaking his own film with a new cast and seeing if it still works and maybe expanding it a little bit more. I am sold on that. This is amazing. This story, this work is timeless, and I would love to see Reservoir Dogs resurrected. Don't use that title. So I whispered, I love you. Yep, I just saw about 3 more of you unsubscribe. How is Goodfellas not number 1? How did you put that other Scorsese movie ahead of Goodfellas? Well, we'll talk about that when we get there, because I might have just one more controversial opinion before we get there. But Goodfellas, yes, this is another one of those films that on any given day might be a top 3 movie of all time for me, or might not be even in my top 10. I change my mind on it. I try not to rewatch this film, because every time I do rewatch it, I kind of like it less. So I don't rewatch it. But what a classic. It's another one of these films that just, there are so many quotes, there are so many moments that live in my mind. This is not a film about mob bosses like Vito Corleone. It's not a film about the big dogs of the mob. It's about people that are kind of working inside the middle of the mob, just trying to make money, trying to get by, trying to survive. We follow Henry Hill, who is this kind of junkie of a dude. He's not a good human being, but he's also just kind of caught up in the middle of a lot of this mob stuff. It's his life, and he loves the life, but he also doesn't want to get killed. We have Robert De Niro, who plays this psycho piece of shit in this film, but is terrible. Like, that one shot of him just smoking at the bar when he decides to whack that dude is one of the scariest scenes and pieces of acting I've ever seen in a movie like this. It's horrifying. Joe Pesci, of course, plays the unhinged Tommy. Everybody knows his performance in this movie. They talk about it. Although I think his performance in Casino is a little bit better, he is still incredible here. This is a sprawling epic that really covers a long period of time as we watch sort of the rise and fall of Henry Hill and the rise and fall of this period of the mob. It's a brilliant movie that's loved for a lot of different reasons. It's brutal, it's graphic, it's got a lot of terrible violence, it's suspenseful, things happen that you don't expect to happen, but it's also hilarious and ridiculous at times. It is just one of the most perfect movies about this subject you could ever make, and it is brilliant. And although the rewatches of it have made me feel a little bit like I saw the TV glow, shout out again if you understand that reference, because I keep making it in my videos, and I don't know if anybody's gotten it yet. Go watch I Saw the TV Glow. But I do love Goodfellas. It is a movie that I've seen 100 times, and will probably watch 100 more times, and probably hate it after I watch it 100 more times. I'm probably not going to like it anymore, which will suck. Alright, let's get it out of the way. The Godfather number 2, which means number 1. Yeah, I probably just pissed some people off. Yeah, The Godfather's a classic for a reason. It's talked about as being arguably the greatest movie ever made for a reason. It's Francis Ford Coppola's absolute masterpiece. It's a film about the Corleone family, this mob boss family and this gang leader named Vito Corleone and his family, and how it's kind of a family business. This movie is essentially the prequel to Succession. It's Succession if Succession was about the mob, essentially. We follow this family, we follow Michael Corleone as he has to take on the responsibility of taking over the family. There's a bunch of other stuff that happens in the movie that's been talked about to death for the last 150 frickin' thousand years that this movie's been out. I don't want to get too into it. Everybody's talked about The Godfather, everybody has an opinion on it, and you want to hear me explain why I'm putting the movie I'm putting at number one. So let's just say The Godfather, masterpiece number 2. Yay, let's move on. So yes, I think The Irishman is the greatest mob movie of all time. I'm going to say something even a little more controversial. I think it might be Martin Scorsese's best movie he's ever made. Yes, I know how crazy that is, but give me a second to explain. And this is, yet again, my opinion. I love The Irishman. It's a movie that came out on Netflix a few years ago, probably should have gotten a theatrical release. It's an epic movie, over 3 hours long, about an entire life of this one mobster, Frank Sheeran. And although the actual historical facts of this are kind of bullshit, and this film is really based on this dude who lied through his teeth till the day he died, claiming that he killed everybody important that has ever been killed in the entire history of humanity, it doesn't change the fact that the actual fictional relevance of this film is still extremely strong. This film is amazing. Frank Sheeran as a character, this kind of quiet, mild-tempered dude who also is just kind of a mass murderer, but he's very friendly and very... It's one of the most interesting characters Robert De Niro's ever played, and an against-type character versus all the other characters he's played in Martin Scorsese films. Because you kind of root for the Irishman, you root for Frank. He seems like such a chill dude, despite the fact that he's killing all these people. And his relationship between Joe Pesci's Russell, another character that is so against-type for Joe Pesci. He's not this loud, unhinged character. He's a very quiet, mild-mannered, controlled, kind of a mob architect. You know, he's building the mob. He's the boss. He's not this crazy son of a bitch like Joe Pesci's done in other films. And watching that relationship grow over almost like half a century of time is so beautiful to see. And then you also have Al Pacino playing Jimmy Hoffa, who gives, in my opinion, the best performance of all of 2019. That includes Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker. Yes, I know that's crazy, but him as Jimmy Hoffa got very underappreciated. It is a brilliant performance. And his performance and how it kind of connects with Frank Sheeran and how they grow together over the years, it makes the entire plotline of the movie so brilliant. This movie is beautifully shot. There's not a wasted scene. Every beat of this movie is utilized well and feels like it is so important to the actual context of the themes in the story. Because this movie, yet again, like all the mob movies, they're about family, but they're also about brotherhood. They're about how cool the Italian lifestyle is, but also how terrible and stupid it is at the same time. This movie has great music, horrifyingly graphic whack scenes and kill scenes that are just not really fun to watch, but are still impactful. But at the core of it, what makes this movie so strong is this movie was an exploration of mortality for Martin Scorsese. This was a film made by a creator who's coming to grips with the fact that their life is in the third act, which is sad to say, but it's something we all have to go through eventually, and Martin Scorsese is clearly thinking about it very often, and you could feel that in this film, which makes it so powerful. I think the third act of this film is one of the best things ever written and put into screen, both the way it's shot and just the basic concepts that it explores. The idea of being buried above ground because it doesn't feel as final. The idea of leaving the door open at the end. You don't want it to fully close yet. There's just little things that show how genius Martin Scorsese is. To me, this movie kind of takes everything I like about mob movies. The goofiness, the darkness, the great characters, the hilarious writing, the whacks, everything you want in a mob movie is in The Irishman. I go back and rewatch this movie all the time, and I discover and feel something new about it that I have never seen before. It is an absolute masterpiece by cataclysmic proportions. It is an epic of grand proportions. This is just, to me, one of the greatest films ever made, and I don't think it gets the attention it deserves, mainly because it was a Netflix film. And Netflix films just don't get as much love as the big theatrical releases. I love The Irishman. You should love The Irishman. It's the best mob movie of all time. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to leave your list down below. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more tune-in notifications. I'll see you in the next one.